Sunday. So let's get started here. Job. In the land of Uz there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. His sons used to take turns holding feasts in their home, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. When a period of feasting had run its course, Job would send and have them purified. Early in the morning he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." This was Job's regular custom. One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." "Does Job fear God for nothing?" Satan replied. "Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, everything he has is in your hands, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. One day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing, and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabans attacked and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, "The fire of God fell from the sky and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was speaking, another messenger came and said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, "Your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you." At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship and said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. On another day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them to present himself before him. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil, and he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason." "Skin for skin," Satan replied. "A man will give all he has for his own life. But stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. His wife said to him, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." He replied, "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" In all this, Job did not sin in what he said. When Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard all about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him, because they saw how great his suffering was. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. He said, "May the day of my birth perish, and the night it was said, 'A boy is born.' That day may it turn to darkness. May God above not care about it. May no light shine upon it. May darkness and deep shadow claim it once more. May a cloud settle over it. May blackness overwhelm its light. That night may thick darkness seize it. May it not be included among the days of the year, nor be entered in any of the months. May that night be barren. May no shout of joy be heard in it. May those who curse days curse that day, those who are ready to rouse Leviathan. May its morning stars become dark. May it wait for daylight in vain, and may it not see the first rays of dawn. For it did not shut the doors of the womb on me to hide trouble from my eyes. Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? Why were there knees to receive me and breasts that I might be nursed? For now I would be lying down in peace, and I would be asleep and at rest, with kings and counselors of the earth who built for themselves places now lying in ruins, with rulers who had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or why was I not hidden in the ground like a stillborn child, like an infant who never saw the light of day? There the wicked cease from turmoil, and there the weary are at rest. Captives also enjoy their ease. They no longer hear the slave drivers shout. The small and the great are there, and the slave is freed from his master. Why is light given to those in misery, and life to the bitter of soul? To those who long for death that does not come, who search for it more than for hidden treasure, who are filled with gladness and rejoice when they reach the grave. Why is life given to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? For sighing comes to me instead of food. My groans pour out like water. What I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest, but only turmoil." So Job is in quite the predicament here. Now, it's hard, as you read this, it's hard to really picture the pain and suffering he's in. It is overwhelming. Let's begin with just starting at the first part of the chapter. It says he is blameless and upright. Does that mean he's sinless? No, it does not. It never in there does it say he is without sin. Okay, so just get that clear first. He's supposed to be a normal man just like us. Just as we're trying to follow God's will, that's what they're portraying Job as doing. Okay, obviously from the amount of animals he has, he's a very wealthy man. You know, they're not operating on the money system like we do. They have cattle, sheep, oxen. He's got a large family. He's got 10 children. So it takes a lot to support that family and care for them. Where is Uz? Okay. I hope that you'll do a little bit of research and just try and find this out. They don't know. They don't know where Uz is. They take guesses. It kind of surprises me at how much guesswork goes into in understanding some of this. But they put the pieces together from different things, from different areas of the Bible also, and from older books that most of us don't even look at, old manuscripts that are found, and compare. And they believe that the land of Uz is what today would be the southern part of Israel. Okay? So this just puts it in perspective there. Date, again, it's guesswork. In the reading I did and searching for it, what they came through was some say it was before Moses, some say it was at the time of King Solomon, but in general they say somewhere between Moses and Ezra. So there's a huge gap there. Okay, so it's just old. That's what I get out of it. And who wrote it? Did Job himself write it? Did a personal friend write it? We know it was divinely inspired. It's for us to learn from, but we don't know who wrote it. As you read it, one of the reasons it's so hard to read, and for some people understand, is later on you're going to see it's written in poetry. In chapter 3 there, we get our first taste of it, really. It's a very poetic style. I don't like poetry. That's just me. Okay, so growing up, this book actually was hard to understand, and I avoided it. As soon as I started reading it, I'm like, poetry. Then I had to drag myself through it. Please don't be like that. Read it for yourself. Like I said, there's homework every week. You should be reading before you come to class, okay? So, very first part, it starts out establishing Job's character. A good man, a wonderful man, taking care of his family, very wealthy. He's got many servants. And then we see as things start opening up. Now, one of the descriptions of Job, the entire book, is it's like a play, almost like an opera. Okay, and as you look at it in its entirety, you're going to see this. So right now, the stage is being set. We have this man here, and now we come into the verses, and God has called the heavenly hosts together. They've presented themselves before God. No reasons given, something we just have to trust, something we could speculate on, but we don't need to. They're there before God, and Satan also presents himself before God. In some of the studying I was doing, it said perhaps Satan presented himself as the Jewish culture actually called it a prosecutor, something like a prosecutor today, which would also be known as devil's advocate. Okay, that may be where we got it from, I don't know. But we have God, we have Satan, complete opposites. Satan himself is presented before God also, and God asks him, where have you been? What have you been doing? He says, I've been on earth, roaming around back and forth. And God says, I have somebody I want you to think about. Have you seen Job? And Satan starts off saying, well, yeah, but you've protected him. You have given him so much, and why would he not worship you and praise you if you have blessed him so well? And God says, okay, then I give you permission. Now that's thinking of it like a play, okay? It's the scene's been set, and now the action is going to start happening. And he says, okay, you can touch Job, you can take away his things, but you cannot hurt him. All right. I just have this picture in my mind of Satan going, yes, I get to do something. How many times do we feel in our lives, even when things happen to us, that possibly Satan is there acting on that? One thing after another, it builds up. Why are these things happening to me? And sometimes we start even questioning God when it gets so great. That is what we're looking at in Job here. So, first thing he does, the animals are all taken, the servants are killed. Now we know Job had a lot of servants. Okay, they were out taking care of the animals. The animals are taken or killed, and then all the servants, and then his family, his sons and daughters, 10 children that are all together in one house, are crushed. Crushed. There had to be suffering there. Just that thought alone, I'm sure grieved him. But now he has lost everything that is in some way dear to him, except his wife. His wife is still there, and he still has his friends. although we'll see them later. Now, if Satan had wanted to be completely destroy Job at this time, he would have taken his wife and done away with his friends also. But I think those are going to come into action later. So what does Job do at this time? What would you do? If you lost, think right now, whatever you have in your pockets, your wallets, your bank account, at home, all means of financial support, and then your family dies, your children, what would you do emotionally? Grieving is a hard process for anybody. Taking care of somebody while they're grieving is also very hard. But what would you actually do? Head, and then he worships God. Now would you do that today? If you got news that you just lost everything, would you yell, scream, ask why, and then worship God? Okay, there's a message there. This man trusted God, and we'll see more of that later. So through all this, Job did not sin or blame God. So many times in our grief, we can have actions that are, well, nobody would want to be around us. It's an emotion. But through all this, he did not sin or blame God. How many of us would? That's really a question at this point that we have to ask ourselves. And maybe you've been very fortunate that not a whole lot has happened in your life. And I hope and pray that you have a smooth, uneventful life, but things happen. Parents die, spouses die, children die, financial disasters can happen. Sickness, caring for somebody, going through it with them. So we can relate to all these things. So he gets through this, and again, God has this court up there where the heavenly hosts are presenting themselves, and you have this picture of Satan wandering by again. And God's saying, whoa, where have you been? Well, I've been on the earth. I've been roaming to and fro and walking around, and God says, well, did you see my servant Job? And, God is saying, look, you did all this to him, and he did not curse me. He did not lose his integrity. Okay? He is still blameless. He is still upright. And Satan says, skin for skin. Each version is just a little bit different here. What was this? We're using the NIV in this class, and I found even in the older NIV, sometimes it can be a little bit different. This one says, does Job fear God for nothing? And the second test, I'm sorry, I wrote it down. Yeah, he does say skin for skin. That's not a term we normally use. You can also think of it as quid pro quo, or you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. It's saying he'll give everything he has just to protect himself, his own skin. Okay? What would you do to protect yourself? We know what we do to protect our family, but if you were life-threatening yourself, your own skin, what would you do? So Satan's bringing that point out. Skin for skin. He is going to give up everything he has and curse you if his skin, his body, is afflicted. And God again says, okay, I'll let you do that. but you must not kill him. Okay? There'd be no reason to continue on if Satan killed them. So he can do everything he wants to up to that point. So he starts off, and I don't know if you've ever had, as teenagers, we've had pimples, we've had little sores, things that bother us, and then maybe later on a rash or an allergy, and it's just annoying. Now just imagine that 1,000 times, just exponentially, that an affliction like that, where you've got sores all over your body, and they're oozing. And Job is sitting there when this happens to him, and he's got a piece of pottery, and he's scraping himself. You might even think of it as we as kids when we were picking the scabs off. Okay, we just couldn't leave it alone. Well, he's sitting there picking them off, trying to clean them off, and he's sitting in ashes. That was quite common for skin diseases at that time. Ashes have been through a fire. We don't think of them as cleaner, but we know that fire purifies so many things. So he's sitting in ashes. He's probably putting them on the sores, and he's continuing to scrape them. So he's miserable. He's absolutely miserable. He's still in his right mind. Okay, that has not been taken away from him. He knows what's going on for himself physically. He doesn't know where it came from. But he's sitting there. How many of us would be in a circle of self-pity? Okay, well, we're going to see that later on too. And at that time, his wife, the family member that is still there, and this is where we see that possibly the devil is using her to enact more on Job. Just go ahead, curse God and die. Be done with this. Why are you going to just linger on and suffer more? And when he comes back and says, shall we accept good from God and not trouble? How many of us can say that? Many times, you give me some money, you give me all these things, and I'll take them, and this is wonderful, this is great. But then when we lose things or things don't go our way, we get upset. These are just the little things of everyday life. The picture they're putting here is Job he's lost everything. Family, animals, wealth, everything. Now he's lost his health. And he is still praising God. He's like, I trust God. I don't know why this is happening, but I know he blesses me. So why shouldn't I trust him and just accept what's happening to me? That's a hard concept for us. It really is on an everyday basis. And then we see his friends arrive. Okay? Good for you. I'm sure everybody has good friends that would come to your side. If something happened to you, they would come to try and cheer you up, to see what you needed, to support you in some way. And I would hope that'd be great. But again, in this instance, Satan has not taken away his friends. He's going to use them against him again. Temptation. I mean, if you come from a long distance, and there was no telephone, there was no telegraph, there was no way of possibly during this time, his wife is trying to give him some food, some water. I'm sure that she's trying to help him through this also, but nothing else is said about that. There's some speculation there, okay? So we each have to kind of think of it. Put this scene in your mind as a picture as you study this. His friends are there and just sitting, watching. Have you ever watched a friend suffer? I'm sure a lot of us have gone to hospitals and visited our loved ones or a friend and seen them either going through cancer therapy and treatment after a surgery or any other illness. And we don't like to see that. So many times it's so uncomfortable for us. And maybe it's even uncomfortable to the point where we want to get out of there as quickly as possible. I've come, I've checked, done my time, and now I can get out of here. Well, his friends 7 days sat there and said nothing. And then in chapter 3, we walk into the next scene. And Job opens his mouth to start speaking. And this is where what we would call self-pity comes in. Oh, woe is me. I've got all these troubles. Now, honestly, he really does have just severe trouble. God, in giving us this word, could have wrote, well, he fell down a cliff and he broke some bones and it took him a long time to heal. But no, that's not what he's done here. He's allowed an affliction on Job from Satan. Okay? Now, do not get the idea that God did this himself. Okay? This is Satan. God gave him permission to do this to Job because he wanted to show Satan how powerful God himself was. That my servant here, my servant Job, has the integrity that no matter what happens to him, he is still going to love me. And Satan says, okay, prove it. God says, okay, I'll let you do it just to prove it. So he goes through test number 1, test number 2, and now we start in on how he feels about it. And what's he do? He doesn't curse God. He basically starts cursing himself, cursing the day he was born, looking for that end, the grave, where nothing matters after that. No thought, no action, no hurt, nothing. Now, in today's society, we see quite a bit of that, people longing for that. We have a tremendous suicide rate. People go on suffering either with their health, mental health, physical health, and what they really want is some kind of relief. And many times, and we see this especially in Alaska and the villages, it ends in suicide. They get to the point where they think that is the final answer. I'm going to end it all so I no longer have to suffer. I no longer have to think about this. I'm just done. And that's what his wife was encouraging him to do. Curse God and die and be done. And Job said no. Now, we as physical people today, this is actually kind of hard for us to understand, the feelings that are going on here. I see a lot of people here. I know a lot that's happened to my friends here, the grief you have gone through, the different afflictions, problems, and I'm so happy to see you have gotten through those. Okay? And this is part of Job is just learning to get through these hard times without blaming God. So, he starts out verses 3 through 19. He's cursing the day he was born. Woe is me. Everything's horrible. I'm just going to go eat worms. That's our modern day phrase there. I'll go eat worms. He's self-pitying himself. Woe is me. I shouldn't have been born. This should never have happened. If I just died at birth, then I wouldn't be going through this affliction. Again, he's not cursing God. He's not blaming God. But he's thinking, why am I suffering? Why has this happened to me? And then at the end of the chapter, verses 20 through 26, he's questioning the meaning of life itself. Okay, I was born, I've got to this point, but if this is all there is in life, if there's only hard times and hurt and pain and grieving, then why are we even here? All right? He's going through a whole range of emotions and thoughts, and it really is a giant pity party. How many times have maybe we as husbands or wives told our spouse, you're just having a big pity party, get over it? Or maybe we've even told our kids that when they're throwing a fit. Quit pitying yourself. Well, there's nothing here says that is wrong. Okay? It's an emotion. It's an outburst. It's a release from emotion. That we can feel these things and we can ask and we can wonder, but we still need to trust God in this. I do not know what we're getting close to the end of class here. You do have homework for next week in chapter 2. I got the big version of this, and it says exactly the same thing as what you'll have in your hands. Okay, in lesson number 2, chapters 4 through 14. Okay, so for next week we will not be reading through these. That would just take up the entire class mostly. So your homework is to read it yourself this week. And what I really suggest is that you read it several times. What I found I did besides reading it, I would also get it on audio. Cell phones today are amazing. I can download sermons, classes, and I found that I can listen to all the Bible on it while I'm working or anything else. So time is not an excuse here. All right? I'll work and I'll blank out, and then I'll go back and replay it again to get more out of it. So there's no excuses there. You've got homework to do for next week, and I expect you to do it. We're going to end class here. I'm going to ask Ken Smith, if you would, just give us a closing prayer, focusing on our class throughout the rest of the quarter, okay?
Heavenly Father, we pause to thank you for this time set aside for us to study. We're grateful for the great patriarchs that we can read about, especially Job and his family and his friends, and the faithfulness that he showed towards God in spite of adversity. May we learn from that. Thank you for these wonderful examples from the Old Testament. Father, help us to align our lives the way they did. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay, so we're cutting off the lesson right here. There is no final answers. We're going to get more answers as we go through the rest of the lesson, okay? So stick around. Like I said, this class is more of a lecture type. If you decide that you want to be part of discussion, then the exact same class is in room 1415 with Craig and James, and you're more than welcome to go back and forth or whatever you would like, okay? All right, thank you very much.